The jungle on planet Verex 9 was always loud at night, buzzing insects, whispering leaves, and the hum of strange glowing plants. But tonight it was silent. The air was heavy, like the whole world was holding its breath. The human squad moved through the fog, their boots sinking into soft, blue moss. Each soldier wore armor that shimmered slightly under the twin moons. At the front walked Sergeant Miles Harlan, a man who had seen too many battles to count. Miles was not the biggest soldier in the squad. He wasn't the loudest either. But when he spoke, people listened. His voice carried calm strength, the kind that came from surviving what others didn't. He had gray eyes that missed nothing, and a face cut by thin scars that told their own story. The mission was simple, at least on paper. Scout the jungle. Find the lost research outpost. Bring back the data. But on Verex 9, nothing was ever simple. The squad of 6 moved slowly, flashlights off, using only night vision. The plants glowed faint green, bending as if to avoid them. Somewhere in the distance, something big moved. Leaves shifted. A branch cracked. Then silence again. Eyes up. Miles said quietly through his helmet mic, "No one lags behind." Private Darren, the youngest of the team, swallowed hard. "Sir, it's too quiet. I don't like it." "Good," Miles answered. "You shouldn't." They kept walking until they reached a small clearing. In the middle stood the broken remains of a research pod. Torn metal, claw marks, scorch burns. A helmet lay on the ground, half buried in mud. Lieutenant Vega knelt beside it. "Looks fresh." Whatever hit them wasn't human. Miles crouched down too, brushing off a strange black fur stuck to the wreckage. Not human, no, but smart. Look at the pattern. Not a random attack. This was hunting. The moment he said it, a deep growl rolled through the fog. It wasn't close, not yet, but it made the air vibrate in their chests. The kind of sound that came from something big and angry. The squad raised their weapons, lasers flashing the mist. Movement 10 o'clock. Vega whispered. A shadow darted between the trees. Something low and fast. They heard another growl, higher this time, almost like a cub. Miles narrowed his eyes. Hold fire. That's not the main threat. A small creature stepped out of the mist. It was the size of a large dog, but with a long, sleek body covered in midnight scales that shimmered like oil. Its yellow eyes glowed in the dark. Its mouth was full of small, sharp teeth that dripped clear venom. It was a Core TH cub, a juvenile predator from Verex 9. Deadly even alone. Fatal if its pack was nearby. Private Darren whispered, "Sir, that's a baby." Miles didn't move. "That's not a baby. That's a test." The cub lowered its head, growling softly. The sound made the ground seem to hum. The squad froze, weapons ready. One wrong move, and the cub would call for his mother, and then they'd all be dead. Miles looked into the cub's eyes. Something passed between them. Not fear, not anger, just challenge. Then, slowly, the cub took one step forward. Its growl deepened. It was claiming the clearing. Everyone waited for Miles to give the order to fire. He didn't. Instead, he did something no one expected. He growled back. The sound was low, rough, and deep, not human, not entirely. It came from somewhere primal inside him, something older than speech. The cub blinked. Its ears flicked. The growl stopped. "Sergeant." Vega whispered, eyes wide. "What are you doing?" Miles didn't answer. He just stared at the alien cub, shoulders square, voice steady. He made another sound, softer this time, but firm, a warning tone. The cub tilted its head, confused. It sniffed the air, claws digging into the soil. For a few seconds, no one breathed. Then the cub made a strange clicking noise and took one step back. Private Darren whispered, "Is it scared of you?" Miles' lips curled into the smallest grin. Not scared. Unsure. He kept his stance, still calm, still dominant. Every soldier around him was shaking, weapons half raised. But Miles didn't blink. He didn't move. After a long moment, the cub let out a low huff, almost like a sigh, and turned around. It walked slowly into the mist, tail twitching. Then it was gone. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The only sound was their own breathing. Vega finally said, "What the hell just happened?" Miles exhaled slowly. Predators read body language. Fear makes them attack. You meet their eyes, you stand your ground, you speak their way. He glanced into the fog. You're at a moment of mercy. But as he said that, something deeper in the jungle answered a roar so loud it made the trees shake. The cub hadn't gone far. It had gone to fetch its pack. Miles raised his weapon. "Move out. Now. We're not alone anymore." The squad ran, boots thudding against moss and mud. Behind them, the growls grew louder, not one, not two, but many, as they vanished into the shadows. The fog closed behind them, hiding what followed. And in that moment, everyone in the squad knew the real hunt had just begun. The fog thickened behind them as the squad moved fast through the alien jungle. The air tasted like metal, sharp and cold. Every sound echoed strangely. Their breathing, their steps, the click of their safety switches. It all felt too loud, too human. Sergeant Miles Harlan led the way, his rifle raised, eyes scanning the dark. He could still hear the distant growls following them. Sometimes one, sometimes many. It was like the jungle itself was alive and hunting. Private Darren stumbled over a root. "They're coming after us, aren't they?" "Keep your voice down," Miles said, calm but firm. "They're testing us. They don't rush in right away. They wait to see if we run." Vega cursed under her breath. They'll get their answers soon enough if this fog gets thicker. The mist wrapped around them like a living thing. The trees loomed taller, their black leaves glistening with strange dew. Some of the plants pulsed faint light, reacting to motion. The whole forest seemed to be watching. Miles signaled a halt. The squad crouched low, forming a loose circle. He switched his visor to thermal mode. Faint heat signatures flickered all around them. Moving shapes. Dozens. Maybe more. "Eyes everywhere," he whispered. "They've surrounded us." Darren's hands trembled as he gripped his weapon. "We should shoot, sir. Make noise. Scare them off." Miles shook his head. "No. Noise brings the pack faster. Predators feed on panic." He scanned the jungle again. Through the fog, he could make out the faint outline of something crouched high in the trees, eyes glowing, tail twitching, watching, waiting. "Lieutenant Vega," Miles said quietly, "what's the reading on your motion tracker?" She checked her wrist display. Too many pings. It's like they're everywhere. Miles thought for a moment. His tone stayed level, but his mind raced. The cub had retreated, but it hadn't been scared. It had been curious. And now the rest of the pack wanted to see the strange creature that dared to growl back. "We keep moving," he said finally. "Slow. Quiet. Stay close. Don't break formation." They walked carefully, weapons up, eyes wide. Every few seconds, a shadow shifted in the fog. A tail, a claw, a flash of movement, always just far enough to make them doubt what they'd seen. The jungle floor changed beneath them. Soft moss turned to hard, cracked earth. The air grew warmer. They were nearing geothermal vents. Steam hissed on the ground, mixing with the fog and making everything shimmer. Then came a sound, a low, slow thump. Not a growl this time. Footsteps. Heavy ones. "Something big," Vega whispered. Miles raised his hand for silence. His heart beat steady. He turned slowly, scanning left, right, up. Then, from the mist ahead, a shape appeared. It was the cub again. But this time it wasn't alone. 3 larger creatures flanked it, sleek, black-skinned predators with eyes like burning gold. Their spines were covered with sharp, bone-like ridges. Steam curled off their backs as if their bodies burned hot inside. They didn't attack. They simply stood, blocking the path. The cub made a small clicking noise and stared directly at Miles. "Sir," Vega whispered, "it remembers you." Miles lowered his weapon slightly. "Yeah, I remember it too." The lead predator, bigger than any of them had ever seen, stepped forward. It was easily 3 meters tall, moving with silent power. Its breath came out in white mist. The alpha, Darren panicked. "Sir, that's the parent. We need to shoot." Miles turned his head slowly, meeting Darren's terrified eyes. "If we shoot, we die faster." The alpha tilted its head, studying the strange, fragile humans. Its growl was deep enough to shake the ground. Miles didn't blink. He took one slow step forward. "Sergeant." Vega hissed, but he ignored her. He holstered his weapon and lifted his empty hands, palms open, showing he wasn't a threat. The alpha's nostrils flared. It took another step closer. Its claws sank into the dirt, its muscles tense, ready to strike. Miles met its gaze and did something that froze everyone in place. He growled again. Not a loud growl, not angry. It was deep, low, and steady. A sound of presence. A sound of will. The alien stopped. Its golden eyes blinked once. Then again. Miles held the sound for a few seconds, then went silent. The alpha let out a soft rumble, almost questioning. The cub beside it chirped quietly. "What is happening?" Darren whispered, voice shaking. Vega whispered back. "He's talking to it." The alpha moved closer. Miles could feel its heat, smell the metallic scent of its skin. He didn't move, didn't breathe too fast. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body stayed firm. Then, after a long, heavy silence, the alpha turned its head slightly. It made a low growl in reply. A language. Miles understood none of it, but he knew one thing. It was not an attack. The cub looked from its parent to Miles, then back again. It made a small trill, almost like approval. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the predators began to back away into the fog. One by one, their glowing eyes vanished into the dark. Silence returned. The squad stood frozen, too afraid to even speak. Miles finally turned around. "They're watching, always watching. But not hunting, not yet." Vega frowned. "Not hunting? What do you mean?" "They're waiting," he said quietly. "They're trying to understand what I am." And deep in the mist, far behind them, came one final growl, distant, powerful, and haunting. The kind of sound that meant this wasn't over. Miles tightened his grip on his weapon. "The next time we meet," he muttered, "they won't be curious." The jungle was quiet again, but it wasn't peace. It was a kind of silence that made every breath feel too loud. The human squad stood frozen among the glowing trees, staring into the fog where the alien predators had vanished. Sergeant Miles Harlan scanned the mist one last time before lowering his weapon. His armor was scratched and covered in alien dust, but his eyes stayed sharp. "They're gone," Vega said, voice low and shaky. Miles shook his head. "No, Lieutenant. They're just watching from where we can't see." Private Darren exhaled hard, the sound shaky in the comms. "Then what do we do, sir?" "Keep walking like nothing happened." Miles turned toward him. "We move forward. But from now on, no lights, no noise, no panic. If they come again, we stand, not run." The squad nodded, though none of them looked certain. They started walking deeper into the jungle. The glowing plants leaned away as they passed, as if afraid to touch them. The smell of iron and ash filled the air, traces of geothermal vents that cracked open the ground. Steam hissed through glowing fissures, turning the mist into a ghostly dance. The path was narrow, winding between massive black trees. Strange vines hung low, and tiny red insects crawled on the bark, glowing like sparks. The forest had a rhythm of its own, slow, alive, breathing. Darren kept glancing behind. You think they'll attack again? Predators don't waste energy, Miles said. They strike when they're sure. And if they're sure soon? Vega asked. Then we make them doubt again. The team fell silent after that. For almost an hour, nothing happened. No growls. No movement. Only the sound of their boots and the quiet hum of the jungle around them. The calm felt unnatural, heavy with unseen eyes. They reached an old ridge, stone and roots twisted together, leading up toward a faint red glow. From the top, they could see across the canopy. The twin moons reflected on thick mist that covered everything like a silver ocean. Beautiful, Vega whispered. Miles didn't answer. He was looking at the far distance, where the red glow wasn't moonlight. It was fire. He zoomed in with his visor. Charred metal. Broken structures. The lost research outpost. There, he said. That's our target. They began climbing the ridge. Every few steps, loose stones clattered down. Darren slipped once, catching himself with a curse. Quiet, Miles warned softly. They moved slower, more careful. When they reached the top, the smell hit them, burnt plastic, ozone, and something worse. The outpost was a wreck. The walls were torn apart like paper. Pieces of equipment lay scattered, twisted by claws or melted by plasma. A data core blinked weakly in the rubble. Vega knelt by it. Power's dying, but we might still get something out of this. Do it fast. Miles said, we don't have much time. While she worked, the others secured the perimeter. Darren took watch facing the jungle. He tried not to look nervous, but his hands wouldn't stay still. The fog at the edge of the clearing began to move, slow, rolling like a tide. Miles, Darren whispered. Something's out there. Miles turned, rifle ready. Where? Darren pointed toward the trees. There, between those trunks. It's... He stopped. The fog shifted again. Something huge moved behind it. Miles stared into the mist. The heat sensor showed faint shapes circling again, dozens of them. They're back, Vega said, standing quickly. No, Miles said quietly. They never left. The wind shifted, carrying a deep, distant rumble, not a growl this time. A drumbeat sound, a signal. Vega frowned. What is that? Communication. Miles said, they're calling others. He switched to wide comms. Everyone defensive positions. No sudden moves. The team formed a half circle around the ruins, rifles ready. The mist thickened, curling around their boots. Out in the fog, 2 glowing eyes appeared. Then 4, then 10. Darren whispered, Sir, we're surrounded again. Miles didn't answer. He could feel his pulse, steady but fast. His instinct screamed at him to shoot, to run, to do something. But he remembered the cub and the silence that had followed. He took one slow step forward, lowering his weapon slightly. Vega hissed, Are you insane? Maybe, he said softly. But if I'm right, they're not just predators. They're intelligent, curious. He faced the fog. If they wanted us dead, they have done it already. The ground trembled slightly. Then, from the mist, a single large shadow appeared, the Alpha again. Its golden eyes locked onto Miles. It stepped closer until the heat from its breath touched his armor. Miles didn't flinch. Easy, he said quietly, voice even. The Alpha stared at him for a long moment. Then, From the side, the cub appeared again, smaller but more confident this time. It made a low clicking sound, like it was calling out. Miles didn't growl this time. He only spoke softly. "We don't want to fight." The alpha tilted its head. Its claws dug into the dirt. Then it turned slightly toward the cub, as if listening. For one strange second, Miles felt something. Not fear, not anger, but connection. The sense that this creature understood him in some distant, primal way. Then the alpha made a short, sharp growl, almost a warning. The cub lowered its head, obedient. The pack backed away slowly into the mist. And then silence. "They're gone again," Vega said. "Why?" Miles looked into the empty fog. "Because they're not hunting us anymore. They're watching what we do next." Darren swallowed. "That's good, right?" Miles didn't answer. He looked up at the red glow of the burning sky, the wind rising. The mist moved faster now. The forest began to hum, like thunder coming from underground. He felt it in his bones. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. The jungle trembled. At first, it was only a faint vibration like distant thunder. But soon it grew stronger, shaking the ground under their boots. Steam hissed from cracks in the earth. The red glow from the sky deepened, washing the forest in crimson light. Sergeant Miles Harlan tightened his grip on his rifle. The calm silence was gone. The forest felt alive, angry, restless. Lieutenant Vega looked around nervously. "That sound, it's coming from below us." Miles nodded. "Yeah, they're moving underground. Burrowers. Courtiers sometimes dig before they attack." Private Darren's voice cracked. "You mean they're under us right now?" "Could be," Miles said, scanning the tree line. "Stay sharp." The squad formed a tight circle near the ruins of the research outpost. Their visors flickered as static filled the air. Something was interfering with their sensors. Some kind of pulse. Vega tapped her wrist display. "They're jamming us." Miles didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the jungle ahead. He could feel it, the pressure, the energy, like a storm gathering strength. Then came the first sound. A sharp crack. A scream. A blur of black motion, slashing through the fog. "Contact!" Darren yelled, firing wildly into the mist. Blue light flashed from his rifle. The bolts hit nothing. "Hold fire!" Miles shouted. "They're baiting us." But it was too late. From the right, something massive lunged out of the shadows. Claws flashed. Vega fired, hitting in the shoulder. The creature roared, a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the clearing. It wasn't the cub. It wasn't even one of the smaller hunters. It was bigger, taller than a tank, with armor-like skin and burning gold eyes. The alpha. The impact sent shockwaves through the dirt. Darren fell, shouting. Vega rolled behind a fallen beam. The others fired in short bursts, the light cutting through the red fog. The alpha moved fast, impossibly fast for its size. It slammed into a soldier named Reed, sending him flying into the ruins. His armor sparked. No one saw him get up again. "Miles!" Vega shouted. "We can't take this thing." "Keep it distracted." Miles yelled back. He dived behind a half-broken wall, switching to thermal vision. The creature's heat signature blazed like a small sun. Every breath it took burned through the air. Miles aimed carefully, one shot at a time. He fired at its side, trying to hit the weak points between its armor plates. The bullet sparked off the surface but didn't pierce. The alpha turned toward him, roaring so loud his ears rang. Miles ducked as a massive claw tore through the wall, sending debris flying. The ground split beneath him. He barely rolled away before the creature struck again. It was fast, brutal, intelligent. Every move was a test, a pattern, not random rage. Miles gritted his teeth. You're thinking, aren't you? You're not just a beast. He saw the cub again through the smoke, smaller, standing behind the alpha, watching. Its eyes were focused on him. The realization hit him like a punch. It wasn't just hunting. It was learning. Vega, he shouted. They're not attacking the squad. They're watching me. What? She yelled, reloading. They're testing how I fight. Before she could answer, the alpha struck again. It lunged, claws wide. Miles dodged sideways, grabbing a burning pipe from the wreckage. He swung it with all his strength, smashing the hot metal across the creature's jaw. The impact made it stumble back, snarling. The heat hissed against its flesh. For a moment, everything froze. The alpha growled low, a sound of warning, not pain. Then, slowly, it lowered itself, shoulders tense, watching him. Miles threw the pipe aside and stared right back. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He took a step forward. The squad shouted at him, but he ignored them all. He stood tall, blood running from a cut above his brow, chest rising slow and steady. Then, just like before, he growled back. It was deep, powerful, and raw. Not human anymore. Not civilized. It was primal, a sound of defiance. The alpha froze. The cub tilted its head. For several long seconds, nothing moved. The only sound was Miles' low growl fading into the heavy air. Then the alpha stopped breathing hard. Its muscles relaxed slightly. It looked at him, really looked, and something in its eyes changed. Curiosity, recognition. It took a slow step back. The cub chirped softly, watching its parent. Miles didn't move. He just met its gaze, calm and steady. The alpha made a low rumbling sound, not anger, but something else. Respect. It turned, brushing past a broken wall, and disappeared into the mist with the cub following close behind. The jungle went silent again. The ground stopped shaking. The only sound left was the squad's breathing. Vega lowered her weapon. They're gone again? Miles nodded slowly. No, they decided not to kill us. Not today. Darren's voice trembled. Sir, what was that? Why did it stop? Miles took a deep breath. Because I stopped being prey. He looked into the fog where the creatures had vanished. And maybe for the first time they saw a human as something else. The squad regrouped, shaken and silent. They checked the perimeter, recovered what little they could, and treated the wounded. Overhead, thunder rolled across the red sky. The jungle glowed brighter for a moment, as if lit by unseen fire. Miles stared upward, his mind racing. The courtiers hadn't just been animals. They were studying them, adapting. The next time they met, it wouldn't be the same. He whispered under his breath, almost to himself. The storm's begun. The rain started without warning. Thick, heavy drops cutting through the mist like liquid glass. The jungle hissed as the water hit burning soil. Steam rose around the squad, turning everything into a glowing red fog. Sergeant Miles Harlan stood at the edge of the ruined outpost, drenched, weapon hanging by his side. His armor dripped with water and alien blood. The storm above cracked with red lightning that lit the world in flashes. Behind him, Lieutenant Vega and Private Darren crouched under a half-collapsed metal wall, trying to fix the damaged comms. Every few seconds, thunder rolled across the valley, long and deep like the planet itself was growling. We need to move, Vega said, shouting over the noise. That alpha could come back any second. Miles didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the dark jungle ahead. His instincts told him something. Someone was already there. They're not gone, he said quietly. They're circling. Darren frowned. Circling? But why? They had us. Miles adjusted his visor. The fog rippled like something massive was pushing through it. They're thinking, he said. They're not beasts. They're waiting for us to make a mistake. A flash of red lightning split the sky, lighting up the jungle for a single second. And in that second, they saw them, dozens of shapes, black and slick, standing still between the glowing trees, not hiding anymore, watching. Darren's voice shook. Sir, that's the whole pack. Vega's hand went to her sidearm. They're surrounding us. No, Miles said slowly. They're blocking us. He lowered his rifle and stepped forward into the rain. His boots sank into the wet soil with every step. The others whispered his name, but he didn't stop. The air around him vibrated with a low, rising hum, the sound the cordage made when it prepared to strike, the sound of tension and dominance. Then, through the fog, the Alpha appeared again. Its scales shimmered like wet obsidian. Its golden eyes glowed brighter in the storm. The cub stood beside it, smaller but proud, matching its parent's stance. The pack parted to make space as the Alpha walked forward. It stopped a few meters from Miles, towering over him, every muscle coiled and ready. Miles stood firm, rain dripping off his chin. You came back, he said softly, though he knew the creature didn't understand words, at least not human ones. The Alpha tilted its head. Its chest rose and fell, slow and steady. Then it growled, a low, rolling sound that made the ground tremble. Miles didn't raise his weapon. He met its gaze, steady and unflinching. The squad behind him stayed still, terrified. The cub moved closer, curious, chirping softly like it was speaking to Miles. The Alpha's tail flicked once, sharp and fast, a warning. Miles took one slow step forward. The rain poured harder, thunder cracking above them. I'm not your prey, he said, voice calm and low. I'm not here to fight you. The Alpha's eyes narrowed. It took a step closer. Their breaths met in the air, human and alien, heat against rain. Miles could smell its breath, metallic, sharp, alive. Behind him, Vega whispered. He's talking to it again. Quiet, Darren hissed. He'll get himself killed. But neither of them moved. None dared. The Alpha lowered its head until its eyes were level with Miles. Its growl deepened, a tone that came from deep inside its chest, a sound that wasn't just a threat, but a question. Miles slowly raised one hand, palm open, showing it was empty. He took another step closer, his boots squelching in the mud. The cub chirped again, higher pitched this time, stepping forward too. Miles whispered, Easy, little one. The Alpha shifted slightly, its golden eyes flicking between Miles and the cub. Then, to everyone's shock, the Alpha made a sound that wasn't a growl. It was lower, almost rhythmic, like a pattern. Miles frowned. It's repeating something, he murmured. Vega whispered, It's communicating. Miles slowly copied the rhythm with his voice, a deep, steady rumble that shook in his throat. The sound wasn't perfect, but close enough. The Alpha froze. The cub blinked. Then the Alpha made another sound, softer this time, almost a response. The air seemed to still. The jungle, the rain, even the thunder, all felt distant now. Miles lowered his head slightly, a sign of respect. You understand, don't you? He whispered. The Alpha let out one final rumble. Then, slowly it stepped back. The cub followed, looking up at its parent. Miles didn't move. He let them go, eyes following until the fog swallowed them completely. For several long moments, the squad stayed frozen, waiting for an attack that never came. Finally, Vega broke the silence. What the hell just happened? Miles turned toward her, rain still dripping down his armor. They made a choice. Darren blinked. A choice. Yeah, Miles said. They decided to let us live. Vega frowned. Why? You said they were predators. They are, Miles said quietly. But predators respect courage. Maybe they saw something familiar. Thunder cracked again overhead, lighting the sky blood red. The pack was gone, vanished like smoke, leaving only rain and silence. Miles walked back to the squad, his movement slow, deliberate. Vega looked at him. What now? He glanced back at the jungle. Now we finish what we came for, before they change their mind. They gathered what they could from the wreckage, data drives, power cells, fragments of alien metal. Every sound, every rustle in the trees made them flinch, but the attack never came. As they began moving toward the extraction point, Darren looked over his shoulder one last time. In the fog, far behind them, he saw two glowing shapes, the alpha and the cub, watching silently. He whispered, "They're still there." Miles didn't turn. "I know." He kept walking, rain pounding on his armor. Let them watch. Maybe one day they'll remember who stood his ground. And as the storm raged above and the jungle swallowed their trail, the legend of the man who growled back began to spread, one whispered story at a time. The storm passed by morning. The red lightning faded, and the sky turned gray and quiet. The jungle of Verex, 9 steamed under the rising twin suns. Every leaf dripped water. Every breath of wind carried the smell of burnt metal and wet soil. The human squad walked in silence through the clearing. Their armor was dented, their boots caked in mud, and their eyes heavy with exhaustion. The air still hummed with the memory of last night's chaos. Sergeant Miles Harlan led the way, steady and calm. His face was streaked with dried blood and rain. He had barely slept, but his mind was sharp. Behind him, Lieutenant Vega and Private Darren followed, carrying what remained of the research data from the destroyed outpost. No one spoke. The jungle did that for them, buzzing with strange life, distant cries, an occasional low echo that reminded them of who still lived out there. Darren finally broke the silence. "Sir, why didn't they attack again?" Miles didn't look back. "They made their point, and I made mine." Vega frowned. "Their point? They wanted to see what we'd do, how far we'd go, whether we'd run." He glanced at the jungle around them. "We didn't." The words hung heavy in the air. They reached a ridge overlooking the valley. Down below, the mist curled like white smoke over the glowing plants. The broken outpost looked small now, a scar in the endless green. Vega sat on a rock, catching her breath. "Command won't believe this," she said. "Aliens that tested us instead of killing us." "They'll believe," Miles said, "but they won't understand." He looked at his hands. They were still shaking slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline that hadn't fully faded. They weren't animals. They were soldiers, too, in their own way. Darren frowned. "You think they respect us now?" Miles nodded slowly. "Maybe, or maybe they're just curious. Either way, we earned their attention." For a long while, no one said anything. The sound of dripping water filled the silence. Then Vega's wrist display beeped. A signal. "Weak but human." She tapped the screen. "Command base. This is Vega, Echo Team. We have the data core. Outpost destroyed. Multiple Core TH encounters. 3 casualties. Requesting extraction." The reply came through static. "Copy that, Echo Team. Coordinates locked. Dropship inbound. 10 minutes." Darren let out a shaky breath. Finally, they set up a small flare beacon for the dropship. The orange smoke rose into the sky, curling through the mist. Miles stood apart from the others, staring into the jungle. He could feel it, that same unseen presence, quiet but near, watching. The trees moved slightly, as if something large shifted between them. He didn't raise his weapon. He didn't need to. The wind carried a faint sound, low, rhythmic, familiar. A growl. Not angry, not warning, almost a greeting. Miles smiled faintly. "I hear you," he whispered. Darren looked over. "Sir." "Nothing," Miles said, turning away. "Just an echo." The dropship arrived in a rush of wind and heat, engines roaring as it descended. Dust and leaves flew into the air. The ramp lowered, and 2 medics jumped out, waving them over. "Let's move," Vega ordered. The squad climbed aboard. Inside, the hum of the ship felt strange after days in the jungle. Safe, human. As the dropship lifted, the jungle below grew smaller. From the window, Miles could see the faint glimmer of eyes in the mist, golden, glowing, still watching. Vega followed his gaze. "You really think they'll come after us again?" He shook his head. "Not yet. They're thinking." The medic patched a cut on his arm. "You're lucky to be alive, Sergeant. Most men wouldn't have stood that close to a cortege and walked away." Miles gave a tired smile. Luck had nothing to do with it. The medic frowned. "Then what did?" Miles looked out the window again, understanding. The flight back to base was long and quiet. No one talked much. Each of them replayed the night in their minds. The roar, the growl, the storm. And that impossible moment when the Predator turned away instead of striking. When they landed, command officers rushed out, demanding reports, questions, proof. The squad handed over the data drives. Vega explained the attack. Darren spoke of the storm. But when they asked about the encounter, about why the cortege had spared them, no one had an answer. Only Miles. He said little. He filed his report, gave his statement, and walked out. That night, he stood alone outside the base walls, looking up at the alien sky. The moons hung low, reflecting in his tired eyes. He could still hear that final growl in his head, deep, steady calm. It wasn't a threat. It was a memory, a shared moment between 2 predators who understood each other. Miles smiled to himself. "They'll tell stories about this one day," he murmured, "and they'll get it wrong." Behind him, Vega approached quietly. "You're not sleeping?" "Not yet," he said. She leaned against the wall beside him. "You think it's over?" He shook his head. "No, it's never over. Not when 2 species finally see each other for what they really are." The wind shifted, carrying a distant echo, that same low growl from deep in the jungle. Vega frowned. "You hear that?" Miles nodded. "Yeah. What is it?" He smiled faintly. "A reminder." As the alien wind blew across the base and the stars shimmered overhead, Miles Harlan, the man who growled back, stood in silence. Somewhere out there, a cortege pack moved through the fog, led by a golden-eyed alpha and its curious cub. And when the cub looked up at the stars, it let out a quiet growl that sounded almost human. The storm had ended, but something far greater had begun. A month passed since the storm on Verex 9. The jungle had begun to heal. The scorched trees grew new leaves. The rivers ran clear again. But beneath the calm surface, stories moved, quiet, invisible, unstoppable. Among the human soldiers stationed on the frontier, one story spread faster than any radio signal. They called it the Growl. A tale about a man who faced down an alien predator and lived. It started as whispers, then became a rumor, then a legend. Some said Sergeant Miles Harlan growled, so loud it made the alien pack flee. Others said he tamed the alpha with his eyes. And a few believed he wasn't a man at all, but something else, something that the jungle itself had chosen. Miles never corrected them. He worked quietly at the outpost, repairing gear, filing reports, and training new recruits. But wherever he went, people stared a little longer. They lowered their voices when he passed. Even Vega noticed it. "You become famous," she said one morning. smirking over a cup of Bitter Rations coffee. Miles looked up from his datapad. For what? Not dying. For standing your ground, she said. That's rarer than you think. He smiled faintly, then looked out through the steel window. Beyond the walls, the jungle stretched endless and green. They'll forget in time, he said. They always do. But he was wrong, because while humans told a story one way, far beyond the ridge, deep in the red-lit jungle, another story was being told too. The Corti-H pack had returned to their territory, the alpha scarb alive, its cub now nearly grown. Around the nesting cliffs, the smaller packs gathered to listen. The air vibrated with the low hum of their language. They spoke of a strange creature, soft, weak, fragile, yet fearless. They spoke of how it stood before the alpha and did not run, how it spoke in their way, not with words, but with will. The cub remembered the moment well, the sound, the defiance, the stillness that followed. When it closed its eyes, it could still see the human's face, calm in the storm, eyes unblinking. The cub made a deep rumble, trying to mimic that sound. The others listened. The alpha nodded. And so, even in alien tongues, the story began to spread of the creature that growled back. Weeks later, a small research vessel from Earth landed on Verex 9. Its crew set up base near the same valley where Echo Team had fought. They were scientists, not soldiers. Their mission was to study communication patterns among the Corti-H. Miles was called in as security lead. When he arrived, the scientists greeted him like a celebrity. You're the one, right? One of them said, eyes wide. The man from the story? Miles sighed. Depends which version you heard. They laughed, but he didn't. That night, while the camp slept, Miles sat outside near the jungle edge, watching the fog roll across the valley. The air was quiet, too quiet. Then, faintly, he heard it, a low, soft growl. Not close, not hostile, familiar. Miles stood slowly, stepping toward the sound. The fog glowed faintly blue, and through it, two shapes appeared, smaller than before, yet unmistakable. The cub, now older, and beside it, a youngling of its own, the next generation. Miles froze. His heart beat steady, but he didn't raise his weapon. The cub, no. The new alpha now made a sound, a short, rhythmic growl, almost like greeting. Miles smiled softly. You remember, he whispered. The youngling stepped forward curiously. It sniffed the air, cautious but not afraid. Miles crouched low, hands open, letting it sense him. Easy, little one, he murmured. I won't hurt you. The youngling blinked, then made a small sound, not a growl, but a short echo of a human hum. Miles' smile widened. Learning fast, he said. Behind him, Vega's voice called softly from the camp. Miles, you out there? He didn't turn. Yeah, he said quietly, just saying hello. When he looked back, the two Corti-H were gone, melted back into the fog. Only the faint vibration of their growls remained in the air, fading slowly. He knew they hadn't come to threaten. They had come to remember. By the time the sun rose, the scientists found strange prints near the camp. Deep claw marks and human boot tracks side by side. One of them pointed. What do you think it means? Miles just said, it means the jungle remembers. Later, when they transmitted their reports to command, the signal carried not only human data, but something else, a recording of faint, low-frequency sounds. The pattern was complex but rhythmic, deliberate, two tones repeating. One human, one Corti-H, a message of coexistence. Command didn't know what to make of it, but the soldiers who'd heard the stories already knew. They whispered that somewhere out there in the red fog, the predators of Verex, 9 had begun to speak the language of courage, taught to them by a human who refused to kneel. And as the years passed, the growl became more than a story. It became a symbol. Recruits would hear before deployment, a lesson about fear, strength, and respect. Children on the colonies would act it out in schoolyards. Even starship crews would use it as a phrase. Growl back like Harlan. Miles never claimed ownership. He stayed on Verex, 9, quiet as ever, watching the horizon. Sometimes, late at night, he'd hear a distant roar in the wind. Not a warning, not a threat, but something closer to friendship. And he'd whisper back, his voice low but steady. Still here. The legend of Miles Harlan, the man who growled back, crossed stars and species, carried by wind, word, and wonder. And somewhere deep in that alien jungle, a golden-eyed predator would lift its head, listen to the night, and growl softly. Not to hunt, not to fight, but to remember. Because in a galaxy filled with monsters and men, there are moments that change everything. Moments when even the wildest of creatures pause and understand. Humanity never kneels.